think we're going to have a barn burner today, David Pendleton. I think. Because I'm one of those controversial, competent and articulate spokespersons from both sides of a controversial issue.
I love it already.
In the tradition of the original KSCO Saturday specials that are becoming harder and harder to produce.
But we're bringing it today.
We are doing it, but before we do that, let's go to Dave Michaels, okay, which is, did I get your mic on?
Yeah, I think you do.
Okay,
so you got it right.
Yeah. So what's happening in the cave
MZ,
today?
I don't know. Well, we have a sale going on, as we usually do. Fantastic deals, MZ. Buy your tangy tangerine at regular price. Everything else is 30% off. I do still have some tangy tangerine left, as well as Arthrodex, the on-the-go start packs. In case you don't like the flavor of any of the tangy tangerine products, we do have the on-the-go start packs, and that's just the 30 little packets with all your vitamins and minerals all in one little packet. Just swallow them down. We got a whole bunch of stuff out there.
Very convenient.
MZ. Very convenient. Somebody called this morning to ask if I had any glucogel. The short answer is no. The long answer is yes, but it's not mine. So the Dave kit, we're out of glucogel. But I have my friend Doug has some glucogels that won't be on sale. But I do have some. So the long answer is I do have some, but that's not going to be on sale. The short answer is no.
We need to get a extra large order of it, right?
Right. Well, we have a shipment coming in probably at the end of next week, so just be ready for that.
Okay.
But in the meantime, I'm going to be out there, MZ, just like every Saturday, 10 till 2. If you can't make it out there, go to kscohealth.com. or call 831-218-KSCO if you need more help getting through whatever you need.
And in the interim, Dave Michaels, between now and the time when we have a Dave Cave South in Salinas, Pacific Grove, Monterey, somewhere around there, or maybe in multiple places, you're still delivering?
Yeah,
People
absolutely.
can make arrangements with you, so if they don't want to drive all the way up to their favorite radio station, they can make arrangements with you to deliver it right to their doorstep.
Absolutely. Unless it's, way in the heck out there, it's probably cheaper just to send it through the mail. But we'll get it to you. One way or the other, we'll get it to you.
All right. That is terrific. Let us start the show officially, okay? This is how we do that.
Good morning. A brighter day is here. Good morning. May we bring you cheer.
We've got time, we've got tunes, we've got time, tunes, and temperature.
Get up and go, it's today, on KSCO Radio.
Lucky for talk radio, there aren't too many things that humans can agree on. I mean, universally, right? Uniformly, or whatever the word is. So we have a topic today on the Saturday special, as I said, in the tradition of original Saturday specials from 25, 30 years ago. And I think we're going to learn a lot of information today, so do stay with us.
Good morning. Now stay right here on KSCO Radio.
They have it in British Columbia. They're talking about it in New York. They're writing about it in San Francisco, and it's being considered for Capitola. What is it? It is the EHT, the empty home tax, and it is on the ballot for later this year. Will it help to increase affordable housing, or is it that we simply have not built any affordable housing, and therefore this could be avoided? Tune in this Saturday on the Saturday Special from 10 a.m. to noon with your host, MZ, and guests from both sides on your...
Our house is a very, very, very fine house with 2 cats in the yard. Life used to be so hard. Now everything is easy 'cause of you.
AM 1080 KSCO.
And we are pleased to welcome into the KSCO studio today Cyndi Dawson, volunteer campaign manager for Yes on Empty Home Tax, and Dan Coughlin from a group called Santa Cruz Together, which is in opposition to the empty home tax. Welcome, Cyndi, and welcome, Dan.
Thank you for having us.
Nice to be here.
Great to have you here at KSCO. Now, this is a topic that one thing everybody can agree on is that the cost of housing, rents, home ownership, and so is insane.
Absolutely.
Is that? And that's not a strong enough word, right?
Well, you know, that's what this comes out of is that fact, right? That you said that it's hard to get everybody to agree. I think that's one thing everybody can agree on, is that the price for housing in the city of Santa Cruz and Santa Cruz County and kind of everywhere at this point is just astronomical and unaffordable to most working people. And that's where this initiative has come from the community to try to provide part of the solution to this really, really tough problem. So, you know, we need to build more affordable housing. And in order to build more affordable housing, we have to have money to pay for it. And that's what this is about, full stop.
Okay. Dan Coughlin, you agree that housing costs are insane, yes?
That's true, and it's definitely a statewide problem.
Right.
It's very difficult for a city like this to solve, especially with this type of measure.
Okay. Now, was this something that, forgive my ignorance, but was this something that where they put out a petition, you know, to put something
Absolutely.
on a ballot?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I'm someone who will always sign a petition to put something on the ballot. Mm-hmm. Now, what about you? What about you, Dan? Really? So
no.
you don't want? You think it's so bad that you don't even want to give people a chance to vote on it?
I had the opportunity of speaking. So I've been part of many petition drives in the past. I scrutinized them pretty heavily. I had the opportunity to speak with a number of their signature gatherers, and they were wholly uninformed of the actual implications of this measure. They approached people and said, "Do you support affordable housing?" And of course, everyone supports affordable housing. It's like, do you support kittens? But but the devil is definitely in the details in this measure.
Yeah, I definitely take issue with our signature gatherers not being informed because, again, the opposition wants to make this about something it isn't. What this is about is we know. I also happen to be the chair of the Planning Commission for the City of Santa Cruz. Now, I'm not speaking in that capacity, just to be very clear, but I do want to say that in that it gives me an understanding of what is being built and the costs of things coming down the pipe to be built in Santa Cruz. And what I've learned in my time in the Planning Commission and speaking with affordable housing experts is that if we don't have money to subsidize the building of affordable housing, it will not get built. So teachers, childcare workers, healthcare workers, kind of the engine of our economy in the city of Santa Cruz cannot afford to live here and are getting pushed out. And so what this is about and what our signature gatherers were educated about, and you can read the ordinance for yourself on our website, is like, how do we raise funds to actually get these units built? And that's what it's about.
Isn't there something called inclusionary?
There is, absolutely.
What does that mean? The developers have to pay some extra money to get their developments through, and that money goes toward affordable housing, right?
Well, sort of. And there's a couple things to know about the inclusionary. So the city of Santa Cruz has a 20% inclusionary.
What does that mean?
That means that let's say you're a developer and you're going to build 100 units. That means that 20 of them would be for low to very low to moderate income. And it's important that it's for moderate income. The city of Santa Cruz changed that. So when they say affordable housing, it's moderate income, which means you need to make about $80,000 a year to afford a moderate unit that the city of Santa Cruz is calling affordable. But the important point about that is there are some state laws, SB 8, SB 9, SB 10, the density bonus law that actually trump our local inclusionary. And so actually for a lot of the big projects, we're getting more like 13% affordable. So like we're building 100 units and we're only getting 13 units that could be considered affordable. And that includes moderate units, which aren't affordable. Like a teacher starting off in Santa Cruz doesn't make $80,000 a year. And so the affordable housing that is being built is not enough. And for a lot of people, it's not even affordable.
I think that's a pretty good description of inclusionary housing. It's a departure from this empty homes tax, but the level of inclusionary housing that's required by developers has always been in constant debate in Santa Cruz. It's batted between 10% and 20%, and developers will tell you, is from what I understand from city council meetings, is that 20% is a very difficult number to reach and actually make
I never heard that it was that high until today.
Well,
But you're saying it isn't that high, really.
Well, it's not really that high, and it actually leads us right into the discussion we're having today, which is affordable units are hard to build, and so you need a subsidy in order to build them, and that's what the empty home tax does. It raises millions of dollars a year to get these things built. It's about taking action and getting things done, and that's where this comes out of a really broad coalition of community members who just want more affordable housing. They want their kids to be able to live down the street.
Sounds
and that's not
reasonable.
Now,
Dan, what's
on the
problem?
backs of homeowners that are subject to a yearly civil penalties and criminal penalties for failure to properly report their whereabouts in their home, their own home.
That's incorrect.
That is exactly correct. It's in the ordinance.
Wow, that sounds real draconian to me.
It is.
Yeah,
I've highlighted.
It's not. You can
I've
actually
highlighted the
go
measure
look
for you.
into the Santa Cruz. You can look at the short-term rental ordinance. You can look at the transit occupancy tax. You can look at any tax that is on the books for Santa Cruz. And we hired a very expensive tax lawyer that we paid $500 an hour for because we didn't know about how do you enforce a tax law. We didn't know that, so we hired an expert. And they said, do what is on the books. And as someone who was intimately involved in writing this, we literally cut and pasted what was on the books in Santa Cruz. And these penalties apply when you do tax fraud, basically, right? So if you lie on your taxes, there may be penalties, which is the same for any other tax, right? So this is the same as anything on the books in Santa Cruz.
We're
and you
getting
can look
into
it up.
the details, but any violation of the provision in this proposed law can be penalized by $2,500 per
That's
day.
wrong.
It's right here. I am looking at it, section 3.38.100, enforcement and penalties.
Who wrote
$2,500
this
a
law?
day, plus attorney's fees, plus...
Clearly, it wasn't Cindy who wrote the law that you're reading from.
No, it's their expensive accountants.
Tax lawyers
Oh, okay,
wrote
yeah,
it.
you.
So tax lawyers wrote it so that
But are you looking at the same thing? Because he says that you said that's not true, and he says it is true.
It's right here. In black and white.
Yeah.
I've highlighted it for you, Michael. On your,
I would
on
like
your law.
everybody to go on our website and look at this section and compare it to two sections that are existing in Santa Cruz Code. They're 3.16210, 2412, 1700. They're the exact way that other taxes are enforced. So if people have
Right.
a
And
problem
homeowners
with
don't
the
wanna
way
be subject to
taxes...
if they fail to file their paperwork every year, if they fail to file their paperwork, they're subject to civil and criminal penalties. Homeowners don't want that.
That's not true.
They
It's
have to
an
keep records for
infraction, and
3
you can read it.
years. 3 years they have to keep records of their whereabouts to prove that they were in their home 8 months out of the
That's
year.
incorrect.
That is correct. It's in black and white. It's right here, Cindy. I'm reading it.
Homeowners declare once a year by answering a yes or no question.
Subject to random audits.
Every tax is subject to random audits.
Right, on a federal level and a state level, not on a local level.
That's not true. Transit occupancy tax can be audited at any point. Short-term rental declarations
You're talking
can be
about
ordered.
like for people who do Airbnb, the transit
Those are
occupancy
exempt.
tax?
They're not exempt.
Jesus, you guys are disagreeing on everything, including the law itself and the way it's written.
Because the opposition is much more interested in deploying scare tactics than talking about the key issue, which is how do we raise money to build affordable housing. I'm a homeowner. I would say the majority of the people who are really active in this campaign are homeowners. None of us would sign up for something that would risk us having some draconian penalty. This is in line, what is on the books for every other tax. And what the opposition wants to do is talk about these kind of things that align with what's on the books instead of bringing part of the solution. And that's what we're doing here. I don't know what Santa Cruz Together is bringing to this conversation other than untrue scare tactics. We're bringing part of the solution to this incredibly tough problem. And that's what people should
Hey, wait a second here.
Hang tight.
CFO to Pebble Beach. Red Hot News Talk. AM 1080 KSCO Santa Cruz.
I'm sorry, we're just off the air.
No problem.
Something happened. I have no idea, and he's not telling anything.
Your daughter doesn't want to talk about why her room is a horrible mess. Your son doesn't want to talk about why he's wearing mismatching socks. Your spouse doesn't want to talk about their bad haircut. Families don't have to talk about everything, but they should talk to plan for an emergency. Pack basic supplies in a go bag. Water.
We're experiencing a technical difficulty. We'll be back with you
batteries,
shortly.
Medical supplies, IDs, and some cash. Talk about where you'll meet in case you lose one another. And of course, don't forget to pack the dog treats. Talk to your family and make an emergency plan. Go to nyc.gov/readyny or call 311 to make your family's emergency plan. Brought to you by New York City Emergency Management and the Ad Council.
You're listening to AM 1080 KSCO Santa Cruz. The Saturday special will commence now. MZ, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. So, and I apologize to the audience. We're having egg on our face all over the place today, but
No problem.
somehow we'll get through it. Well, it just died right in the middle of who.
It's okay.
The electronics must have been offended at something somebody said. So where were we?
It might be a good idea to go back and actually talk about what this law is.
Yeah. Okay. Good idea.
Yeah, we're jumping correctly.
And I hope
directly into.
I think you guys are not going to agree because so far you can't agree on what the law is. What do you say it is, Dan?
Full credit to her organization. They collected signatures. It was a citizen initiative to get on the November ballot this empty homes tax. It's a tax on homes or on properties, housing units, where if you are not in that, if there's no occupancy in that house for
8 or more
months in a year,
empty 8 or more
you are
months.
subject to a $6,000 tax. $6,000, depending on the type of housing unit. It might be $3,000, depending if it's a condo or whatever, but $6,000 to a typical homeowner. So you're a homeowner. Let's give a scenario where you are transferred for your job for a year and you leave your house vacant. You have to pay $6,000 to the city of Santa Cruz.
If it's vacant for more than
8 months.
Than 8 months.
Yep.
Okay, so 7 months and 29 days is okay.
You're all good. It's a very incredibly low bar and incredibly reasonable. This initiative came out of conversations with countless community members across Santa Cruz because they were telling us, hey, I'm the only one on my street. I don't have any neighbors anymore, and I really miss them. I like having neighbors. I like having a community. And
there are that many empty houses on one street?
Absolutely.
No, there's not actually. So they sold this on a 10% occupancy rate based on the
That's
census
incorrect.
data,
We didn't sell it on anything.
That's what I heard from your signature gatherers over and over again, and it's on your website. And
It's
I've
9%.
seen it all. Well, okay.
And
10%.
you know who decided that? Experts, not the 5 tech and real estate people who run Santa Cruz
the
together.
Census data version, the definition of vacant for the census data, which was taken in 2020 during the height
It's
of
not
COVID.
census, it's the American Community Survey, so
Which
they're talking
shows-
about the wrong methods.
So the vacancy in that case is a point in time where somebody wasn't in that unit. What they're talking about vacancy is a long-term vacancy over the course of 8 months. So it's, in reality, our data shows that it's less than 1%. So that
Data from people who have no expertise in community surveys. So the American Community Survey and the California Department of Finance, whose job is to determine these rates, disagree. But here's an important one. The city of Santa Cruz commissioned a fiscal impact report. The experts at the city, the staff who actually have a lot of knowledge of what's going on in the city of Santa Cruz, estimated, and we think this is a total lowball, but they estimated 400 to 700 units are vacant, and they estimated this tax would bring in $2.5 to $4 million a year. We think that's low, but let's if we're going to talk about data, let's talk about data from people with expertise.
Section 3 of the impact analysis says, however, it is unclear if this measure would result in net positive benefit or not. So the amount of money that it's take to administer this, conduct the audits, conduct all the yearly...
The city council asked the staff to go back and provide realistic estimates.
Net cat flow positive. This is in its first year, we're going to spend $1 million and collect nothing.
That's incorrect.
That is
the city
right
council.
Here.
Can we just talk about what action the city council took?
I've got to ask each of you. Just let one person
Sure.
talk. Go ahead. You talk, Cyndi.
Okay, so I'm just talking about what has actually happened. Not so on June 28th, the city council received the fiscal impact report. You just heard that they said it would make $2.5 to $4 million. We believe that is an underestimate. We went to the city council and said why we believe that's an underestimate. The city council members had a debate about startup costs and were asked very specific question of staff. The city council voted unanimously to send staff back to provide more realistic estimates because they felt that the estimates of how much it would cost to administer and other costs were completely unrealistic. They directed staff, our city council unanimously directed staff and said, hey, these numbers don't look right to us. And if you look in recent press, when you talk to the city of Oakland, 6 times the size of city of Santa Cruz, it cost them about $100,000 to start their empty home tax up. And they do it.
And they have it?
They have it.
And how long have they had it?
They've had it for 2, 3, 4 years now.
And it was voted by the public, right?
Voted by the
not
public,
by the city
absolutely. So a city 6 times the size of ours cost $100,000 to start up. Our staff was saying ours would cost, way more than that. And the city council said, hey, that doesn't make any sense. If Oakland costs $100,000, we probably would cost less to start up. And so
Vancouver costs $7.5 million to implement, by the way.
Vancouver.
Yeah, so...
Do you have any data on
I
on
provided
Oakland?
it to you.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And their ongoing costs are around $2.5 million.
Yeah, so let's talk about the difference in size, right, of cities.
Let's do that.
So it needs to be scaled appropriately. So if a city like Oakland, who's 600,000 people, costs $100,000 to start up. Let's scale that back to 65,000 people, like in Santa Cruz. And I think people can make their own decision about what it might cost to get this started up.
Well,
also,
it's not going to cost $10,000.
No, it's not going to cost $10,000.
Because it's 1/10 the size of Oakland, right? Not, in fact, a little less than that, right? Am I right?
We're about 1/6 of the size of Oakland.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I'm sorry, 1/10 is correct. But let's just talk about what this is going to do, which is raise millions of dollars.
That's debatable.
And
it's
so
likely to be cash flow negative within 1 year.
Please, no interruptions.
Sure.
No one will enjoy this program if we
No
keep
problem. Fire
interrupting.
away.
So,
yeah.
You'll be able to talk. Everybody will be able to talk.
Yeah, I'm just saying that we're talking about minutia that most voters don't care about. What they want to understand and what is before the voters is it a good idea for people who do not use their property for 8 months a year, more than 8 months a year, more than 8 months a year, it's sitting empty, no one is in it, in the most expensive housing market in the country and like top 5 in the world, is it a good idea for those people who have the luxury of wanting to hold that space empty? Is it fair and reasonable for them to pay? And then should we use that money to build affordable housing? That's what's before the voters, nothing else. And how we wrote this is to be the absolutely lowest burden on homeowners. As a homeowner, I was very interested. I don't want to fill out paperwork for an hour. So we chose a process that will take less than 5 minutes for the average homeowner. It will be something like registering your car online, and you will answer a yes or no question. The city, we don't care where you are. We just want to know if your property was used for 120 days. Yes or no. That is it. It is no more complicated than that. And it will raise millions of dollars so that our teachers, our healthcare workers, our county workers can afford to live where they work. And that has cascading effects across the community. When we have hollowed out neighborhoods, there's nobody to patronize local businesses. You know, so this is like a pro-community, pro-business measure to help strengthen Santa Cruz and make sure that our critical workers and members of our community and our elders can live where they want to, and that we remain accessible and inclusive. Santa Cruz is cool because of the people who live there, and we're losing the majority of the people because we can't afford to live here.
Okay. Thank you, Cyndi. Dan, the floor is yours.
So, this assertion that it's a 5 minute per year burden on a homeowner is absolutely untrue. My mother-in-law is 76 years old. She doesn't know how to log on and do anything like
There's
this.
a paper version.
Right, and my mother-in-law is horrible with paper. So if she fails to fill out this yearly intrusion in your privacy about what you did with your home.
So it's just like everybody has to fill it, not just landlords, right? I mean, just anybody.
Yes.
Everybody, homeowners,
property owners.
Yep.
And if some people own one home for themselves and 6 or 8 rentals,
good question.
They have to fill out one for each property.
You have to warrant, under subject of civil and criminal penalties, the whereabouts of your tenant for 8 months out of the last year. No, that's exactly true. And so now rental agreements are going to have to be modified so that your tenant keeps records for 3 years of where they were for 8 months out of for your entire year. The homeowner pays if the tenant leaves. Let's say I have a student in my home, and the student wants to go, follow whale migration for 8 months, but the student wants to keep the house. I pay the $6,000. The student does not.
Wait. Are you finished talking?
I'm
because
finished.
Cyndi's ready to explode. So should we let Cyndi talk? Are
Sure.
you finished?
Fire away.
Okay, but no interruptions, please. I mean, we have some callers. We haven't even invited calls yet, but and I want to make a little speech too about something. I'm a native Santa Cruzan, and I remember something back in 1977, I think it was, or 76. But go ahead. You want to take issue with something that with one or more things that Dan said, right, Cyndi?
Yeah, I just want to again point listeners to why this was written, because why it was written is to raise funds to build affordable housing. And Santa Cruz Together, as far as I can tell, has brought no solution for that forward. And what the community has decided to do is to do the best they can. Nothing is perfect, right? But we did months of research. We hired experts where we didn't have the information, and we created an ordinance that is focused on folks who really don't use their homes. It's not targeted at people who use their homes. This doesn't tax where people live. And you have to choose a way to administer these taxes, right? You have to figure out, and the way that we heard from people around the world is that the lowest burden on that and to keep administrative costs low is a self-declaration process. And there are lots of ways to do it. And we believe that with technology and even with paper, if you choose that route, that this will be very low burden for very high impact, millions of dollars. And we've been endorsed by housing experts like Housing Santa Cruz County. And as far as the tenant stuff goes, that is not in the ordinance. I mean, none of that, everything that just came out of his mouth is not in the ordinance about the tenants and keeping your whereabouts for 3 months. That is their interpretation. And interpretation is subjective, right? And so they're interpreting this in a way that it was not intended and that it is not written. The words that he said are not there. It does not. Do a word search for the word renter. Do a word search for tenant. You will not find those in there. You will not find those words in there. The only place that the word renter is in there is that there is a citizen oversight committee that has no decision-making authority and will just publicly air a third-party audit once a year. We said that there should be a renter on that oversight committee that is just to review a third-party audit. So there's no word renter. There's no word tenant in there. So that is important for people to understand.
I would agree that it's not in there, and so they didn't think through the practical implications, the unintended consequences of having to abide by this new tax. You have to prove with every property you have, including your own, where you were for 8 months or out of your last year. If you fail to do that or you accidentally disclose something wrong, you're subject to 6 months in jail, criminal penalties, $2,500 per day until it's corrected. And so if you have a property that has a tenant, it's in this ordinance, black and white. You have to prove it with every property you have.
All right, let me make my little speech now about something that I remember. Back in 1975 to 1980, prices were going insane, much like they have gone recently. And I wanted to own a home in the community in which I was born and raised. And it didn't look like the way things were going back then. Even if I became a millionaire, it didn't look like that was going to be possible. But things fell into place for me, and I was able to earn some money. I started a business that had some degree of success.
Congrats.
And thank you. But it was still almost impossible, even with a quote unquote successful business. Anyhow, a friend of mine said, "Why don't you? You're going to pay through the nose anyhow for somebody's old piece of crap. So why don't you do what I did, go find a lot to build on?" And that's what I did. And while I was going through a design review process, and this was in the city of Santa Cruz in 1979, there was a ballot measure that got on the ballot and passed that was called anti-speculation. Were you guys, well, neither of you look that old, actually, so I could probably answer the question. You don't remember anything about that, or certainly weren't here.
I've only been here since 98, so 20-something years.
Yeah, so this was about 78, 79 that it was passed, and it was, again, for the city of Santa Cruz, anti-speculation. And basically, what it said is that if you want to sell your home, whether it's a rental or whether you have to have owned it for at least 4 years, or you may not sell it for a profit. And it overwhelmingly passed, And I had planned to buy a place to live in the 1 year, 1.5 year interim that it was going to take me to build my own house. And it was I thought it was a great investment. But when that ordinance passed, the ballot measure passed, I stopped short and I said, "Hey, I can't do this," because that's exactly what I planned to do. You never know what's going to happen, but chances are my plan was to buy the house, live in it for a year and a half, and sell it for enough of a profit so that I would have essentially lived rent-free, which is what everybody was doing back then, and people do it today, you know?
You bring up a great point. It's an invasion of privacy. It's your property rights.
Well,
You should be able to do
I
with your
didn't
property.
do the deal. Let me finish the story here. I didn't do the deal. I wasn't going to take any chance. It didn't seem that was legal. It didn't seem like it was constitutional.
Fourth Amendment.
And I forget what it was, but sure enough, a local judge, 3 or 4 months after I just lived in the back of my parents' house, instead of buying this place, and my plan just didn't go through. As it turned out, it could have gone through, and because it was declared unconstitutional, and it was wiped from the records.
Yep.
The anti-speculation tax. Do you think that you've checked with experts? Have you checked with legal experts? Because
absolutely.
of this thing, if there's a good chance, I think that this is the same kind of a thing where this could go through, Cyndi, and maybe declared unconstitutional, because it's sort of like it's your property, and if it's my business if I want to keep it empty for the rest of my life.
Vancouver
is absolutely.
has 900 complaints per year and lawsuits out the tail.
Canada law.
The city will be responsible for all lawsuits and according
There's
to
been
this
no
law,
lawsuits in Oakland.
There's 15% of the revenues collected. Only 15% of the revenues collected, if there are revenues collected, can be used for the administration of this, including legal proceedings. Everything else has to come from the general fund. So this will end up costing the city money just to administer it and battle the legal battles that are destined to happen.
Okay, Cyndi's shaking her head. What's he saying that's wrong?
Well, let's have real talk about a couple things. So I do want to go back to one thing. You don't have to prove anything. And all you have to do is answer a question. That's what a declaration is. I encourage everyone sitting on their computer streaming to go ahead and Google Vancouver Declaration video. And you can watch the video. The video's 1 minute and 30 seconds long. And they literally show you how you will type in the information the tax assessor already has to confirm. You'll put your APN number and you'll answer a yes or no question. Was your property in use for 120 days, yes or no? So let's not continue to throw the boogeyman out there.
And if someone says no, and their neighbors, and they're, like you said, there are neighborhoods that have a lot of vacant houses, and some neighbor says, hey, this guy, this neighbor of mine deserves to be punished, and they're not being punished, they must have lied
Section 3.38.030. The city shall establish a process to annually audit taxable properties declared in use to verify the declaration. The registered owner may be required to provide information at any time for a period of up to 3 years.
This is
after
the audit section.
Correct. So it's more than just a 5 minute.
Is it part of the...
Yes.
Do you get audited every time you file your federal taxes?
No.
Have you ever been audited?
Once. Yeah.
Okay. You're rare because I had never actually known somebody who is audited. So a declaration is different than an audit.
So why is it in the law
They are
then, Cyndi?
Please, no interruption. Come
because
on,
every tax has you file your federal taxes every year, right? Okay. And you could be audited every year, just like any single person who files taxes. So I don't understand Santa Cruz Together obsession with talking about tax law, because it's the same as this tax is the same as every other tax. It has the same type of provisions. So they can continue to talk about tax law if that's what they want to. But I think what voters and the city of Santa Cruz want to understand is, how do we address this real big problem, which is we don't have enough affordable housing. How do we pay for it? We pay for it when people don't even use their property for more than 8 months. All they have to be home is 120 days. It doesn't have to even be consecutive. And they don't have to say, I was here or I was there. You don't have to prove that. You just have to say yes or no.
If audited, the owner or the agent or representative shall be required to submit documentation or evidence as required by separate ordinance or regulation adopted by it. What documentation do you have to what do you ask for to prove your whereabouts? What do you have to provide? Your tax returns? Your rental agreement? video of your tenants.
Maybe
that's all up to the
bills
city
to show where you're.
You know what?
Do you
no,
want to give your credit
none
card
of those
bills to a
things are
city?
true. These are in place all over the world, including in Vancouver. None of those things are required. It's very simple. What you're required in an audit, you can look on the list of Vancouver, a government issued ID that has an address that matches the address of that you're declaring for. A tax bill. Most people get their tax. You know how the city of Santa Cruz figured out the 400 to 700 taxes? They went to the tax assessor, the county assessor, and they said, hey, can you give us the mailing addresses for the tax bill of people that aren't in the city of Santa Cruz? They had their tax bill go to their primary residence. And so that was like we still feel that's a lowball estimate, but that's very realistic. So we're not talking about invasive stuff here. We're talking about stuff that is in line with existing practice. We're talking about an initiative that will raise millions of dollars to build affordable housing.
The actual
This what this is
implementation.
about. He's talking again.
You'll have a chance. Yeah,
there's no proof of where you are. I mean, that's never in the order. There's nowhere that this is administered anywhere in the world where that's required. And so, again, what is Santa Cruz Together bringing to the conversation other than scare tactics?
Who's going to decide who gets audited?
A new city
random
department.
audit.
A new city department.
That's not correct.
That is correct. There'll be a new city department that's going to have to administer this. And
No, it will be administered through planning.
There's no in the law. There's no details of the implementation. It's going to be left up to a new department. And so there's no cap on audits. There's no limit to the documentation that they would require.
Okay, so Cyndi is saying that that's false.
So
hold on a second. Let me ask you. You say it's going to be administered through planning, not a new bureaucracy that Dan is suggesting. Okay, just a sec. So will it be like code enforcement of planning? You know, because that's a pretty well established.
Absolutely. Yeah. So what we learned is we actually talk to staff level people in places around the world who have these and said, you know, you guys are the ones who are going to have to do this day to day, like what's working and what's not working. And what we learned from the staff level people in these cities that have this is that when these were passed and had very stringent things about which department and who would do it, it was very problematic. And they said what's really important is that you leave flexibility for your city and the expert staff in your city to figure out how to integrate it into their systems in the most efficient way. Give strong sideboards, but allow the staff to be able to say, oh, we already have a web portal that we use for transit occupancy tax. Let's just build another page and use that. We didn't want to tell the city how to do their job, which is administering, you know, land use decision, planning decisions. And so we have strong sideboards, but we're going to let the experts at the city figure out how to do this in the most efficient way. Again, with very strong kind of sideboards about how to keep administrative costs low. And that is why the city council unanimously asked the staff to go back and do some more research with some realistic expectations about what this would cost to administer.
Oh, so this was done through the staff, not through some consultant that you had to pay a lot of money for the wrong answer that they didn't accept anyhow.
Correct.
Okay,
Right.
go ahead, Dan.
She's implying that the city council thought that the city's impact analysis was too low or too high. We agree. This is one thing that Cyndi and I agree on here, is that we don't believe the city's fiscal impact analysis. It was done relatively quickly, and it's chock full of disclaimers that these are all estimates. And so, if you look at the margin, if you look at the margin of error in this versus what it's going to cost to run it versus the small amount of revenue that it might actually raise, this thing's going to be cash flow negative in the first year and probably all the years beyond. If you look at Vancouver, they enacted this in 2017, and they sold it on the fact that there was an 11% vacancy rate, when in reality it was really about 1.1, which is about what we think we are, about 1% in Santa Cruz. They have raised their fees from 1% of the assessed value in 2017 to now in 2023 to 5% of the assessed value, which is exactly what's going to happen in Santa Cruz. They're going to have to raise these fees in order to support the bureaucracy that's going to administer it. Meanwhile, they're going to be harassing homeowners and causing audits of homeowners. It's the thing. It's not going to raise any money. It's not going to raise any substantial amount of money to actually make a dent in affordable housing. We agree there needs to be affordable housing in the city. This is not the way to do it.
What's your way, real quick?
Santa Cruz Together, we focus on getting sane city council members elected to make these decisions for the city, not through these crazy voter initiatives where you fool people into signing something. The reason that they have to do a voter initiative is because they don't have they don't have the right message, they don't have the right political influence to actually get people elected to city council to make these decisions on the voters' behalf.
Okay. All right. Well, gee, I looked over at the phone board, and it is jam-packed. There is not room for even one more caller. I wasn't going to take any calls until next hour, but didn't we pretty much cover it? I mean, you want to say anything else? Because I'm ready to open the phone lines.
Yeah, I would love to open the phone lines, but
Okay.
I would say one thing before we do that is that, you just asked Santa Cruz Together what their solution is for affordable housing.
Elected leaders.
And what the city council, they've done nothing to address affordable housing. And that is why the community at large came together to do the research and put forward part of the solution.
There's
millions
thousands of units being built in Santa Cruz right now. You know,
they're not affordable.
That?
You know how I know? Because I'm on the planning commission.
But
they're not affordable. The majority are not affordable.
But it's increasing housing supply.
Has to. You covered that before. I'm sorry when I asked you, and I forgot because I'm getting old.
So let's say you build 100 units. The most we're getting in most units is 13 of those are affordable, but they can be called affordable at a moderate level, which means that you need to be making $80,000 a year to afford that. So let's talk about wages in Santa Cruz. So the average wage in Santa Cruz is $29. The average renter rate wage is $16.88. The amount of money you need to not be burdened, meaning paying more than 30%, is $58 an hour. The majority of people who work in the city of Santa Cruz and make our city run do not make $58 an hour. And so how are we going to fix that? And what we're doing is bringing part of the solution. I haven't heard any part of the solution from Santa Cruz other than to aggregate political power and get people.
Good leaders.
Well, great, but good leaders who have done nothing for affordable housing.
How will the good leaders build affordable housing?
They haven't.
They implement good, sane policies.
Such as?
What? Name one that has made more affordable housing.
Hold on, Cyndi. I want to ask Dan, if you were magically on the city council now, and other people like you were on the city council now, can you give me some idea of what you would implement that might be more successful than it's been before, which is not very?
Right.
To get affordable housing.
The average cost of a housing unit for an affordable housing unit in the state of California is over $600,000. In the city of Santa Cruz, it's approaching $1 million, right? So for the city to be able to tackle this alone is very difficult. It's a tremendous amount of money. So what the city does is works with the county and state and federal agencies to try to implement programs, to change land use policies, to make it so we can build affordable housing. Taxing people on their homes, bringing it directly to the homeowners of Santa Cruz, implementing a new bureaucracy, violating people's privacy rights to their home, subject them to audits and criminal penalties is not the way to do it.
Okay, let me ask, we talked about, we flashed back to a time when the voters put through a ballot measure, anti-speculation. About the same time, they put through, there was Measure J, anti-growth in the county, and Measure O in the city, anti-growth in the city. Now, what's happening? It seems to me, just using common sense, that the chickens are coming home to roost now because of both of those policies. Both Measure O and Measure J, where people were hysterical at the time, and it doesn't matter whether they were liberal or conservative. But I voted for I was in the city, so I voted for Measure O myself, because I didn't want Santa Cruz to look like San Jose, you know?
Well,
but listen to me.
Yeah.
Anytime you artificially limit the supply of something like housing units, the guaranteed result is insanely rising housing prices and rents.
So that's been taken out of our hands by the state. State laws trump all of that.
That's correct.
So wait a second.
That's not even in the mix anymore.
So Measure O and Measure J is not applicable anymore. Has been stricken from the record? I don't understand any of this. I never heard it. That would be a big news story. Well, I haven't heard a damn thing about that. As far as I know, you still are not allowed to allow Santa Cruz County to grow more than the state average every year.
That's not true.
I don't know about O and J, but the state has been chipping away at the CEQA laws, the environmental laws.
It's not really CEQA, but...
I mean, there are barriers to building housing, and whether it's affordable or not, and so they're chipping away at the CEQA. I'm just telling you what the state's doing, and then they're chipping away at ADU laws. You can't...
That I know.
And so the state is taking the reins.
I can tell you from the Planning Commission
perspective. And that itself, the ADU thing flies in the face of Measure J.
South of Laurel just approved 17-story buildings. So I can just tell you that whole argument about, like, we can't build, that ship has sailed. But the bottom line is the prices are the prices. And what I do want to say is we talk specifically to affordable housing experts. And you know what they told us is that it's really expensive to build these units. But you know what they also told us? That we have access to hundreds of millions of state and federal dollars if we can bring matching funds in our projects. So all the money that would be raised by the empty home tax could then be matched with state and federal dollars and exponentially increasing the impact. We also wrote this in a way that will allow that it doesn't only have to fund new building. So if there's an old hotel that the city wants to buy or some project wants to buy, they can get that and convert those units to affordable, which is still cost, but it costs less than building new.
Sure.
So we left maximum flexibility to get the maximum impact from this money. So we can't think about it just like, oh, it's going to raise this million or that million. You have to think about that. That could be doubled, tripled, quadrupled in talking to affordable housing experts, because then they can apply for these grants and say, hey, the city of Santa Cruz has given us $1 million, and we want a state grant for $1 million and a federal grant for $1 million.
I'm going to make a lot of people in KSCO listening land hate me with what I'm going to say now. But I want to know if the laws of economics, which I believe are like laws of physics, they can't be violated, okay? That's what I believe. And I believe that Measure J and Measure O prevented build, baby, build from happening, okay? I believe that build, baby, build, if that would have been implemented, and I guess it couldn't have because of Measure J and Measure O, but if it would have and could have, and it can now?
Yeah.
Wow.
Build, baby, build is on. And if
it is?
And empty home tax has not, I mean, that's a state decision. That has nothing to do with what we're talking about. We're talking about this hyper local production. And you talk about the laws of economics. This is about producing more affordable housing.
Okay. We've come through the first hour and we didn't go to the phones and they're still jammed. But at the beginning of the second hour, about 6 minutes from now, we will be opening the phone lines. And you will be able to say your piece, ask your questions of our excellent guests, Cyndi Dawson and Dan Coughlin, here on your favorite radio station, KSCO, Santa Cruz, Salinas, Monterey, San Jose. It's MZ with the Saturday Special. And we're talking about the empty home tax, which is being proposed more and more.
King City, it is at the limit. Current temperature outside the KSCO studios, 61 degrees. Today is going to be sunny with a high near 75. Tonight, increasing clouds with a low of 52. And tomorrow, mostly cloudy, then becoming sunny, high near 71. On the seas today, west winds 10 to 20 knots with gusts up to 25 knots. Wind waves 5 to 6 feet. Patchy dense fog in the morning. Tonight, west winds 15 to 20 knots with gusts up to 25 knots. Wind waves 4 to 5 feet. KSCO News Talk time is 11:06, and we take you back to the Saturday special.
Dave Michaels, don't tell me, let me guess. Business is terrible because people are glued to the radio. Is that right?
Usually business picks up after the show anyways, MZ. They're usually listening to the Saturday special, I guess, before going out for their Saturday cruise. But business has been all right. But again, you want to get there. The sooner you get there, the more likely you are to get the product that you want, MZ.
Cool.
So Tangy Tangerine is not on sale. I do have some glucogel that are also not on sale, but guaranteed you stop by the Dave Cave MZ, you're going to get a great deal. You either get a great deal or you don't leave. Everybody leaves with a great deal or else they just don't leave at all.
And you don't have anybody there, so everybody's leaving, so they must have gotten a great deal.
Yeah, I'll be there till 2 o'clock every Saturday, MZ. If you can't make it there, go to kscohealth.com or call 218-5726. We'll have it delivered to you or delivered personally or through the mail. All right, sound good?
Great, thank you, Dave
MZ.
Michaels. Yeah.
Oh, hello, darling. I hate to hang up on you, but I'm sorry, baby, but I have to go. It's time for that wonderful record show. I'd love to visit, but you'll have to call back. KSCO has the inside track.
Now, as we said last hour, everybody agrees that the price of housing in our area is insane.
Yes.
And we need to fix it. And what about an empty home tax to fix it?
I'm sorry, baby, but I really gotta go to KSCO Radio. Bye.
Our guests are in the studio today are Cyndi Dawson, volunteer campaign manager for the Yes on the Empty Home Tax group, and Dan Coughlin, who is with the group Santa Cruz Together that opposes the empty home tax. What do you think? 479-1080. But if you call it now, you're going to get a busy signal because the lines are jammed. But let's just launch right into it. Let's take our first caller. That would be Peg in Santa Cruz. Peg, welcome to the Saturday special. You're on. Peg.
You ever pot her up?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, it's all potted up. Well, okay. Well, I'll
there. Is that better?
Yeah, now there you are, Peg. Were you muted and didn't realize it or something?
Yes, that's it.
Okay. Well, you're on now. We can hear you.
Okay. When you look at why, the part of the system on this is looking at people that want to invest money in rentals in Santa Cruz. And for years, it's been people that were self-employed. They bought property, they rented it, and they're using it for retirement. When the first thing came through in terms of rent control, a lot of them, I know that there were, something like 125 doors that became available in our office for people to buy because this was their retirement income, and if they lived to be 90, they were going to be broke. And so those houses, a lot of the properties were older. They needed to be something done with them. They were torn down, and they're building brand new houses for owner occupancy. And so part of the thing is we need to make it attractive to investors. And they've taken away they're trying to put big rocks in if you're filling up a jar. But a lot of the housing in Santa Cruz were sand that sort of fit in. That somebody took a master bedroom, made a rental out of that, so to provide housing. And because we're losing that part of it, that flexibility, and the relationships between landlords and tenants went from being mostly cooperative, except in the case of some of the corporate ownerships. And what we want is a business where all of the parts of the system are working and all of them are thriving. You know, you can't exploit tenants and have a great relationship with them. Things have changed. You know, we need to raise the salaries of all of those people that support us. You know, we would need to build. We needed to have built housing that took care of the people that work in the tourism industry, because 40% of the taxes come to Santa Cruz from people that are working in the hotels and the restaurants here. And you know, we didn't look at that when we were putting in housing 20, 30 years ago. I've been doing real estate for over 40 years, so I've watched the evolution.
Peg, do me a favor. Tell us whether you're for or against the empty home tax.
Oh, I'm against it. Okay. I think it's a way of not getting people housed.
Thanks, Peg. Yep, you're right. During the Measure M, which was during
this has nothing to do with Measure M. I would just like to be really clear.
But the proponents are the exact same people, and what they're trying to do again is create a division between the renters and landlords. Hundreds of units, housing units, were sold
more people getting housed
during Measure M. But it does just the opposite, though. That's the problem.
How does creating more affordable housing?
Because landlords are going to get tired of these regulations, and they're going to sell their property to owner-occupied. That's exactly what happened during Measure M. People are going to look at this and say,
unless they're prevented from doing that, that would be
this supports landlords renting out their property. That's what this does. This encourages landlords to rent their property. It encourages strengthening our community, and it encourages exactly what Peg just said, is we need places for our tourist workers to live, and that's what we're providing from this initiative.
Okay, go.
No, you're not. You're creating a situation that is toxic for an investor. And you know what I'm hearing from a lot of my clients was, why don't I just put it in the money I have in the stock market, and I don't have to worry about plumbing. And
I think that's pretty unlikely given how the stock market's doing right now. What happens is people make speculative investments in real estate. They hold them empty because it's a safer place for their money, and it hollows out our neighborhoods and prevents the housing stock from being created to house our workers.
You don't go to jail for investing in the stock market.
I think I'm in a better position to know what's going on. How many houses have you sold or shown in the last 6 months? How many people have you talked to that are possible buyers or investors? I mean, this is what I do, 24/7.
Okay. Okay, Peg, thank you for calling the Saturday. So I want to get to our other callers here. Gary and Live Oak. Wow, you've been waiting 54 minutes plus. You're on the air now.
Okay, if I get 90 seconds, that'll be only 30 seconds less than both
You're
the
taking up
county
so
and the
much
city.
time already.
I'm sorry. Anyway, problem, chaos, solution. The selling of the destruction of private property is a plank of the Communist Manifesto. The $500 an hour so-called experts. I've been to a number of California League of City managers or California cities, and they have people that will, they'll pay anything to get their report. So experts are not experts, they're bought off. Don Lane, who was the mayor of the city, gave the key to the city of Santa Cruz to communist Angela Davis. Gus Hall called for the butchering of children, and they've never rescinded that particular thing. As far as right now, I'm looking at the planning department. They're only open from 8 to 3, and from noon to 1 they go out when most people are getting off of work. The hardworking people can't even get near them. There is a law under reverse mortgages that neither Jimmy Panetta or Republican Tom McClintock has rescinded. If you have a reverse mortgage, you can't have anybody else in your house but yourself. I'd love a student in my house. I was born first birthday, 1941 was my first birthday, Pearl Harbor. I'd love to have a student in here, but they forbid it. There are all kinds of people that come to the Monterey Bay area to retire, and if they have a reverse mortgage, they are not allowed to have anybody else living in the house.
Which you do?
Outrageous.
You have a reverse mortgage, Gary?
I do.
I see.
If you live in your house, this you wouldn't pay the tax. So all you got to do is live in your house. This doesn't tax where people live. So if you live in your house, you're all set.
Yeah. Okay. All right, Gary, thanks for calling the Saturday Special. Appreciate it. We're going to take our next caller now. Darius in Santa Cruz. Thanks for waiting 54 minutes, Darius. You're on the air now.
Thanks. First of all, a lot was talked about Oakland. Surprisingly, Oakland did something right with their empty home tax. What they did is they're not asking residents to self-report. No, they're doing the smart thing. They're going to the tax roll and they're simply sending letters to the folks that have not taken the homestead exemption. In other words, absentee owners. There's only 22,000 of them in all of Oakland. So they just simply sent a letter to all 22,000 absentee-owned owners. In Santa Cruz, that number, excuse me, figures here, is 4,586. This is directly from the assessor rolls. Now, full disclosure, like Dan, I'm an engineer. I'm a numbers guy, and I look at real data to make decisions. So there's 4,586 absentee-owned parcels in the city of Santa Cruz. Of those, the vast majority are rentals. In fact, I got a hold of the rental inspection database, which has 11,375 units, but of those, of the parcels, it also identifies the parcels that are in there. And then I also got a hold of the short-term rental database, of which there are 308 parcels listed. Also, I mentioned that because
291 in the city of Santa Cruz.
Okay, 290. Well, we're within 2%. Okay. And Cyndi, you have access to this data. You're on the Planning Commission. So when you when you cross-correlate these databases, the city's own databases, the county tax assessor's own database, there are 573 absentee-owned single-family home condos or townhomes. Of those 500, now, I took those 573, created a spreadsheet, okay, by street. I sent this to you as well as all the other supporters of, the endorsers of the housing of this EHT.
Well, you would have had to send it to over 6,000 residents who signed the signature if you sent it to everybody.
I sent it to the folks that are endorsing the empty home tax. You got a copy of it. I literally drew you a map. I gave you a flashlight. Here by street of the empty homes. Of absentee-owned parcels, homes. Now, just out of curiosity, I thought 573 was too many. So on a rainy February afternoon, when rich second home owners would probably not be coming to Santa Cruz to enjoy their vacation rental, two of us drove for 3 hours every neighborhood: Prospect Heights, Seabright, West Side, Upper West Side, the Flat, and we literally checked for occupancy. And of those, we were able to check 49 separate homes, and we found three.
So you being a numbers guy, that's not a statistically valid sample, 49 of the number that you just said. And this obsession with numbers is conjecture. What we are talking about is this a good idea to
the numbers are
try to raise money to build more affordable housing?
I think
Full stop.
Darius is saying is that there are, Darius, would you come up with less than 100 houses that might be across the city that might actually qualify or that might actually be subject to this tax?
I'm not sure what qualifies Darius as the person to determine the number of vacant.
He did way more research than you did. He actually drove around and saw these houses, and he cross-referenced 3 databases in the city of Santa Cruz.
You don't know how much research I did, so let's try to not get personal. Let's stay focused on the initiative. And I'm not sure why the opposition, all of the folks on the opposition. We don't think it's going to make money. We think it's going to be cash flow you know
negative.
what? It's not going to cost us money, so let's give it a try.
Well, why don't we send letters to those with absentee parcels? Because all the folks that took the homestead exemption under penalty of perjury with the Santa Cruz tax collector said, this is my primary residence. Why should they have to say every
Because
year?
the administrative cost to do that is much higher than a self-declaration process. Full stop. That's why we chose a self-declaration process, is because we did do the research, and it is cheaper to administer a self-declaration process than take city staff's time to every year determine who to send a letter to, and that's why we chose it.
573 postcards.
Okay.
How much did that cost?
So Darius, love to have you on longer, but there's so many people who want to talk. So here's Cyndi in Capitola, and immediately that his place is taken.
Hello?
Immediately. Yeah, go ahead, Cyndi. Talk to Cyndi and talk to Dan and
Hi,
talk
dear.
to MZ.
Okay, so you guys at UCSC, they have 10,000 students a year that come in, and they're taking up all the housing.
20.
They also have been matched funding for something like, I don't know, millions of dollars, $91,000 per unit if they were to build units for all these kids. But guess what? Those are dorms. They're claiming it costs $91,000 per unit for a dorm. That's an apartment room. So if the city of Santa Cruz was serious, they would be looking at taking those 10,000 students and finding UCSC be responsible for some of that housing. That's a significant number of homes right there. And I'd love to hear what Cyndi has to say about this and what your other guest has to say about that, please.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for calling in, Cyndi. Yeah, you're going to get no argument here that UCSC should be responsible for housing their students. I don't think.
Agreed.
I think it would be tough to find anybody in town who just lives in town. I'm one of the few people. Well, not the few, but there's a small number. A group of people in Santa Cruz who have no affiliation with UCSC. Like, I didn't go there. I don't work up there. And so there's a lot of people in town who really have strong feelings about the university continuing to grow and not being responsible for students. And students themselves who support this measure, by the way, students themselves are clamoring for housing. They're under real challenges for housing instability. They come here thinking, oh, great, I got into UC Santa Cruz. I am so excited. And then the university is leaving them out to dry. And so, this is part of the solution, but we got to keep pushing on UCSC to house their students. You won't get any argument here, that's for sure.
I would agree, and I don't want to get too far off topic.
Another issue of agreement. All right. Listen, Cyndi, thank you for calling 479-1080. Here's our next caller, and that is going to be Jim in Pacific Grove. Jim, you're on.
Hi, MZ.
Hi.
It's the plethora of confiscatory socialist policies like this proposal that are destroying California and driving folks out of the state. Cyndi, you have no moral right to steal the assets of hardworking folks to fund your solution to a problem that was caused by socialistic regulatory policies in the first place. It's an unsustainable economic model that we see collapsing all around us. That's why the state is falling apart. It's like throwing gasoline on a fire to put the fire out.
Yeah, wow. Okay.
Thanks, Joe.
All righty. Thank you for calling KSCO. Now, our next caller is going to be Dick in Santa Cruz, but I'm going to read an email first, okay? It says, anonymous because of canceling attacks. Kurt is, I'll say that, but about 5 years ago, my landlord in Salinas was selling his house. I looked full time for 7 weeks to find a house. Trying to find out why afterwards, I did some research. These are the facts, but politically not allowed to talk about. 5 years ago, Salinas had 153,000 people, 34,000 illegals. 2.5% worked in the fields, 900 or less. At 8 people per unit, they sucked up at least 4,000 units or more. Post-Biden border policies, how many now? If the illegals were sent home, we would have at least 4,000 more units in Salinas alone, with 2 exclamation points. That would make housing a lot more affordable for Americans. I realize it's off the topic.
I'm not going to touch that one, Cyndi. How about you?
Yeah, everybody's afraid to
That's
talk
a whole
about
different policy.
I'm happy to say that, everybody deserves a house, and people's citizenship status has no no bearing on whether they deserve stable, safe housing. And I'll just leave it at that.
Okay. Let's see. What else do we have here? Doug says, why subject a select group of homeowners to pay for a general benefit, in quotes, tax? This initiative is a classic example of mob rule or progressive authoritarianism. What's mine is mine and what's yours is mine. Is Cyndi willing to pay for others' affordable housing voluntarily at the same rate as the maximum tax or fine that she supports for others? That's from Doug in Santa
Yeah,
Cruz.
absolutely. If I wasn't in my house, I am a property owner. If I wasn't in my house for 120 days, right? So I was gone more than 8 months a year, I would actually absolutely support paying the tax. And so taxes are a part of our fabric, right? We have gasoline taxes that pay for our roads. We have school taxes that pay for our schools. I don't have any children, but I'm happy to pay every time there's a school bond, an education bond. I vote for it because I feel it's an immense community benefit. And having a thriving Santa Cruz means that we have neighbors and that people are home. And so that's what we're about here is supporting and strengthening our community. We need to have places for people to live. And right now, everyone's getting pushed out. You know, people can't live down the street from their parents. The grandkids can't live down the street. And we want to address that head on. This is part of the solution.
All right, here's an email from, I don't know who it's from, T. It says, this is really scary. This is a real, and I'm not being selective. I'm reading all the emails here because this is a really, really bad idea that will devolve into invasion of privacy and a huge burden on homeowners. It's none of the government's business to know how long and when someone has been living in their house. It sounds so simple. Just check the yes box at the end of the year. So what's to stop the homeowner from simply checking yes that they were present for 180 or more day or whatever the number is, even if they weren't? As mentioned, it will be required to do a random audits to verify that property owners were actually present. This is where it gets very, very scary, intrusive, and burdensome. What's to prevent this audit process from being overused and abused, especially when it comes to greedy tax collection?
Amen.
Yes, we are subject to being audited by the IRS, but this introduces a whole new additional threat of being audited. Just because the money that's obtained will go towards a good cause does not justify all of the negative aspects that this will introduce. Everyone needs to vote no on this, and that's
we don't agree that this is invasive and overly burdensome. It was very purposeful that there's no minimum audits required. The city could actually choose to do no audits, and they would be completely in compliance with the ordinance. And I will say that, you know, there is no way, I think anyone involved in any tax collection anywhere will say there is no way to prevent cheating that is 100% effective. Mm-hmm. And so you just have to do the best and balance where you can, right? You don't want to be
and threaten them with jail time, which is exactly what's in this ordinance.
If you lie on your taxes, you could go to jail for any tax. This is no different.
Okay, there's a PS from T's thing. Hold on just a second. We'll put you on here, but empty house tax experts, right? Leave it up to the experts, the self-anointed experts. You mean like Fauci? Right. Okay. Let me just finish up some of these emails here, and we'll go back to the phone calls. Okay. Barbara says, if it costs $1 million to build one affordable housing unit, the city could build 4 units a year if it brought in $4 million a year from the EHT. If matched by the state or Fed, it could be 8 per year. Okay, well, that's
not exactly how building housing works, but we believe strongly that there is massive amounts, hundreds of millions of dollars available at the state and federal level that could exponentially increase whatever we raise, and whatever we raise is better than nothing.
Okay, EHT is unconstitutional. EHT is a taking with no recompense to the property owner. This is illegal. Moreover, it is none of the city's business whether my property is occupied or not, and the startup cost of the Oakland system is ridiculously low. They have been wanting to do this for years and years, and thus spent plenty of money over the past decade developing software, preparing the office, figuring staff count, etc. Tell the lady to Google, quote, failure of the empty home tax, unquote, for even more reasons to avoid this primrose path. Let's see, first, last. Geez, this is too long to read, even though it's really good. But well, all right, we'll come back to the we'll come back to the. Okay, here's a short one from Vince in PG. Dear MZ, Cyndi is promoting socialist Marxist ideas that are un-American. This is a capitalistic country. Everyone can't live in oceanfront expensive areas. Find housing elsewhere.
Taxes depend on capitalism.
Yeah.
Full stop.
Okay. All right.
So you deny that your ordinance is supported by the DSA heavily and that your members are
Our ordinance
DSA?
is supported by a broad coalition of community members from a broad spectrum of political ideologies. And the reason that is this is not about political ideology. It's about building community and finding places for people to live.
All right, Dick, you've been on. You're on the air, and thank you for keeping quiet while I read emails. But you're on now.
Yeah, they were really excellent. They took some of the wind out of my sails. I just want to make a couple points. I think my first point would be, it seems like, the tax thing keeps coming up because, as everybody knows, the tax laws are handled different than any other law. You are basically guilty until proven, you have to prove your innocence, basically. So the audit is going to be completely subjective. And it kind of puts the citizenry, that owns these houses into indentured servants status with the county, if you look at it that way, because if they don't do their due diligence, which, you have to when you make out your taxes, of course, but the thing is that the audits are, the breakdown for the audits, I mean, if she says we're not going to, maybe we'll break even, but at least we're trying or something here. It seems so flimsy to me because besides the facts that it's $1 million for an average house, if she's going to subsidize some of these $85,000 a year people in some of these as rentals, her 13% she quoted, I guess, in some developments, then that subsidy is going to be incredibly high. I mean, your payment, you're only allowed 40% of your income, which is about $34K, and then that means $2,800 a month is allotted towards taxes and mortgage. So you can bet on, even if they build, these high rises, which I heard we're going to have 5,000 new high rises within the next few years in Santa Cruz City. They're going straight up. Even if you fill those in, the subsidies from the city, the state, the hundreds of millions of dollars that she says, from the state and feds are going to pay all these subsidies. They have to. It seems like the math isn't working. It seems like it's unconstitutional on the basic grounds. It's abusive on the audit grounds. And I generally think the IRS rules are abusive anyway, because you have to prove your innocence always. So they're just, basically, I think they're just lining their pockets at the city, and they're just going to continue any way they can.
I appreciate this. It's actually being foisted upon the city. This is not something that they necessarily want. This is something that was, brought to them and forced upon them. But yeah, I agree with your general sentiment.
I just want to be clear that I'm not going to do anything. So this is a community-driven initiative that was signed by over 6,000 residents of the city of Santa Cruz.
With a 35% failure rate of your signatures, by the way, which is extraordinarily high for a
I hope they're listening to the show.
Yeah.
They'll learn. We'll educate them between now and November.
Yeah,
the folks that signed it are going to learn exactly the devil in these
they're going to
details.
learn that we're going to create more affordable housing and actually allow people who serve the city of Santa Cruz to live where they work. Our teachers, our child care providers, our service workers, our tourism workers.
Yeah,
they can't afford to live here.
This is all pie in the sky stuff. You don't have enough room to develop high rises and subsidize them all, and the traffic control, and throw out the environmental impacts. We know what you're doing. You're making your your control over people's lives and the size of your government bigger, and money for your pensions and your salaries. I know what you're doing. Most people realize that. That's why you have a tough job. Thank you.
Okay.
Well, thanks for your call. Hey, I do want to just let the listeners know that they can look in the ordinance, and it's very important for folks to understand that this money is going to go into its own fund. It's not going to go into existing fund with defined uses in the ordinance. So this can only be used to pay for the administration of the fund and to build affordable housing and some other things that are associated with this initiative.
Pay attention to section 3.38.100, which outlines the penalties and enforcement and jail time and the fees that you are to pay.
Same as every other tax.
Audit. Yeah, okay.
Same as every other tax.
All right, I'm going to say take next. That's John in Santa Cruz. Welcome to the Saturday Special. You're on, John. Go.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
So, first, I want to say that the audits, Ms. Dawson, they will be anything but random. You've personally already set up a page that allows neighbors to turn each other in without any evidence whatsoever. And that seems like anything but random. But I have a question for you. You and the other EHT supporters keep disingenuously stating that the measure won't affect many people in the city. On the contrary, it will require every person living here, including renters, to file a statement every year that they've occupied their home for more than 120 days. This means that the measure will require, in addition to every homeowner declaration, that each and every rental agreement be rewritten and signed to add language requiring that tenants either prove their occupancy, pay any tax levied under the EHT if they can't provide proof, and or face eviction for breach of the agreement every year forever. The only other option would be for a housing provider to actually track their tenants' whereabouts, which is just creepy. So do you think tenants should feel comfortable with that?
Yeah, so thanks for the call and thanks for the question. So again, I would encourage you to go to the ordinance, and the word renter or tenant is not in the ordinance. It says property owners.
That's not the point.
I think I understand your point.
Agreements will be rewritten all over the city. Even
that is not in the ordinance, so that is conjecture on your part.
But that's the practical matter of implementation of this law.
I disagree.
How else am I going to know where my tenant is unless I have that tenant?
Let's go ahead and look at the ordinance. The final what is required is going to be determined by the city, but in other places, so we're not recreating the wheel. There are other places that have similar things, and what is required is the property owner who has tenants just have to prove.
Any of those other ordinances.
I have a case study of a Vancouver 89-year-old elderly woman that had an apartment, and she took it off the market so she could renovate it.
So
and
that is not relevant.
Well, it's her tenant. I mean, it's exactly what happened. It was in September of last year.
I think we're getting off topic again, which is that we need to build more affordable housing, and that this is a reasonable approach.
Agree.
This will build nothing.
Well, I think there are folks who would disagree with you.
All right, John, thank you for calling 479-1080. Now, Elizabeth in Santa Cruz, it's your turn.
Hi. What I want to say is that because of this, my landlord wants to charge me additional $3,000 deposit if this compliance goes through.
Yeah, that's a practical implication,
I think
unintended consequence.
Well, won't they make that illegal between now and when
the city has the ability to be really clear about what the landlords are required to submit, and we're going to encourage it to be pretty high level, which means a landlord would just need to submit a rental agreement. They don't need to actually prove that.
It's a private contract between two people that's now going to be public record. I don't want that.
You could absolutely make it anonymized so that it can prove that somebody is in the property.
Subject to public records request. It's a public record at that point.
It is not, and there's ways around this. People do it all the time. So we can continue to talk about untrue scare tactics and get off topic, which is how are we going to build enough affordable housing for our community to be strong and thriving? And that's what we do.
Build. That's always been the solution.
Millions for affordable housing. And if you have money, you can build housing. If you don't have money, you can't build housing. We're creating money to build affordable housing, full stop.
Okay, Elizabeth, you already talked, so thank you for calling 479.
Thank you.
1080 here. No, I didn't didn't mean to press that button. I meant to press this button, which delivers Scott in Scotts Valley, the town that's named after him.
Thanks for the show, MZ.
You're sure. Okay, thank you.
This lady is textbook example of why the left is done in this country. They are just pathological liars and cancer on this country. Jesus. You're done, lady. We're done with you. You people are just done.
Is that all you... He hung up. Or did you hang up? Are you still there? Yeah. Scott? No, he hung up. Okay.
I will say they have a diminishing influence on the ultra progressives in Santa Cruz. It is a
this
political...
This is not about political ideology.
Except for that's what it's boiling down between the ultra progressives and moderate Democrats that represent the majority of the city of Santa Cruz.
We have many homeowners and many moderate Democrats that support this. People who are teachers, healthcare workers, county workers that are not considered far onto the liberal side, that are right in line because they've watched their kids have to move out of town, they've watched their neighbors, and they've watched their colleagues be pushed out. So we're trying to bring part of the solution, and I've yet to hear any kind of solution from the other side.
Yep, elect good leaders. That's what we do.
All right, I have a email from Alec that's pretty sort of long, but it's worth reading here. Good morning, MZ. My take on this is that the planning department of the county and the city of Santa Cruz has driven up rents since the 1970s. I couldn't agree with that more. The planning department of that era until now always want to red tag and knock down buildings, then gouge working homeowners with property taxes so they can make the county modern and flashy, while they profit from construction bid contracts. The cost of permits to follow building codes, separate of materials and construction labor, has driven out working class families since the 1980s. By the time you build to code and have your property inspected, the code has changed. It's a mind game. The older homes and apartments were the only affordable housing Santa Cruz once had. After the '89 earthquake, Santa Cruz had ammunition to do whatever they like with the building codes and red tag arbitrarily. Now that even more San Jose and San Francisco tech workers live here, this guest you have who works for the planning department. No, you don't work for the planning. You're on the planning commission.
No,
right?
but I'm not representing the city of Santa Cruz or the planning commission. I'm just saying it gives me some idea about land use and building.
We need to correct this misstatement in the
I definitely
email.
do not work for the city or represent the city
wants
in any
to
way.
tax homeowners further. I say we need a new city council and planning department, one with working class values as Santa Cruz had before the UC came here. Have a good weekend, MZ. Please don't retire. Alex.
Alex, I would say look closely at your city council that you have now. We've been working for years to put in a good city council with qualifications and sane policy. So, and it's just getting better.
Okay, next caller is Carol in Santa Cruz. Welcome to KSCO Saturday Special, Carol.
Thank you, and thanks for taking my call and for having this really interesting discussion. I have to say one of my frustrations with this initiative is that it is ideological rather than practical, and the proponents themselves don't know what their own ordinance says and have apparently not thought through all the unintended consequences. For example, they initially said all the Airbnbs were subject to tax when their ordinance specifically says they're exempt. So I've done a lot of research on my own, and although I am absolutely very much in favor of affordable housing, this is not going to get us there. Ironically, many of the same people who helped organize the empty home tax are against the library and the 831 project, both of which contain affordable housing. I can't support this because I believe it will cost the city general fund money every year because of the low vacancy rate. And yes, Cindy, people who are following this are obsessed with numbers because that's what the whole premise is based on. My solution is to quit discouraging development and quit demonizing housing providers as a starter. However, sorry to ramble, my question really centers on politics. I know that the empty home tax was written by the local branch of the Democratic Socialists of America in their working group, which they proudly wrote about. The DSA has gone on to publish many posts on social media promoting the empty home tax as a means to advance one of the DSA's main goals of taxing the rich. I also read Ms. Dawson's statements that even though she knows the empty home tax won't solve the affordable housing crisis, that it is a way to build working class political power now while working on the long-term goal of advancing socialism and ending capitalism. That's a direct quote. This includes the goal of the end of private property by 2050. I'd like you both to speak to this and also to the underlying political goals of the empty home tax. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the call. It's interesting folks are making this focused on ideology because it's not on ideology.
Totally
ideology. Except for it drives policy. So
well, taxes depend on capitalism, and so and again, this is about raising millions to build affordable housing. Everyone on the opposition says, I'm for affordable housing, but you've brought forward no solutions. And we looked around the world and we thought that this was a fair and reasonable approach. And we made things like more than 8 months. It's a very, very low bar, right? And so we're really interested in building. The goal of this is to build affordable housing for our kids, our healthcare workers, our childcare providers, our nurses, our county and state workers, our city workers who don't have a wage that actually can allow them to live in Santa Cruz now. And so that is absolutely the goal of this. And again, I'm not sure why the other side is obsessed around the ideological discussion, because I can tell you, I know who supports the empty home tax. I talked to a lot of the 6,000 people who signed the petition, and their political beliefs are all over the map. And the reason for that is this is not ideological. It's not partisan. It's just about bringing part of the solution. And no one has a silver bullet for the affordable housing crisis. It's been created over decades. It's really complicated. So we need to chip away at that. And that's what the empty home tax does, is it raises millions for affordable housing and actually gets something done, unlike just saying, hey, I'm for affordable housing.
Dan.
Let's say you're a city worker and you've managed to buy a home in the city of Santa Cruz, and let's say your elderly mother in the state of Georgia has to go into a nursing home. You have to go care for your mother. If you're gone for 8 months, that same city worker that's struggling to live in Santa Cruz owes $6,000 to the city of Santa Cruz.
They could apply for a financial hardship, and I bet you that would get granted. I almost guarantee that kind of story would get granted.
That's exactly what a city worker wants to do as his mother's dying in Georgia, is to apply for a financial hardship with some nameless, faceless, black hole bureaucracy in the city of Santa Cruz.
It's not
Have you ever dealt with the building department? I love my friends in the city, but it's going to be no different.
That's not true. And there are places who do this, and technology allows it to be pretty simple. So,
is this still the law in California about if people say that it's a hardship to pay the rent, then they don't have to pay the rent for some period of time?
I don't know the answer to that.
I think that's expired. Are you talking about due to COVID?
Yeah.
I think it's expired.
And again, this is not about, rent or, again, this is about trying to produce more housing. We're trying to produce more housing for people, like normal people, to be able to live in Santa Cruz.
Here's an email from Randy Turnquist. How ridiculous is the proponents of the empty house tax? She claims everyone deserves a home, legal or illegal immigrant status. Yes, the people who commit crimes against our laws get a home, but it's a home in prison. Does everyone, quote, deserve a car, unquote? Does everyone deserve all the other niceties of our society? No, you have to earn it. Forcing builders to build, quote, charity, unquote, housing just drives the price up even further. If everyone, quote, deserves, unquote, a home in Santa Cruz, then everyone will come here because in other cities, you don't, quote, deserve, unquote, a home. You have to, quote, earn, unquote, it. Randy T.
Don't give them any ideas. We'll have an empty car tax next year.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that everyone having stable housing is for what a lot of people want to call the greatest society is a pretty good goal. And I will say that what we're doing is subsidizing buildings. So he's right that these won't get built unless we create a subsidy, and that you have to have capital to create a subsidy, and that's what we're doing.
Zoltan sends an email. The state needs to remove the illegal law in California that landlords cannot give notice to tenants to move after they live in the rental unit beyond 1 year. This way, many homes stay empty while rentable. This is like a communist control of private property. That's from Zoltan.
Yeah, again, this has nothing to do with those type of policies. This is about creating more units for people to live in. We want a full, vibrant Santa Cruz with full neighborhoods, and this will get us part way there.
Michael, MZ, you talked about the economic laws being as written in stone as physics, and that's correct. And there's one economic law that basically says if you're going to tax something, you're going to get less of it. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what's going to happen here. Is exactly what happened in Oakland. It's exactly what happened in Vancouver. The number of available housing units that qualified for this decreased by almost 40% in 4 years.
Yeah. So please focus in on what you said. So it actually put more units back on the market. So it increased the housing stock.
Or sold and became single-family residents. You don't know.
People
what happened
were
with
living
the
in more homes. Mm-hmm. So it had the intended consequence. And also,
it created
over
more affordable homes.
$100 million have been created, raised in Vancouver. And I think it's 84 or 90 million has actually gone directly to producing affordable units in that location.
I wish we had more than 7 minutes available, but now let's go to Chris in Santa Clara. Chris, you're on KSCO. Thanks for calling.
Oh, hey, thanks. A couple real quick questions. Really appreciate it, especially from this side of the hill, hearing the discussion. Currently with 270,000 residents in Santa Cruz County and about 70,000 in city of Santa Cruz, what are the reasonable population projections for the next 20 to 40 years? So in terms of the number of human beings expected to live, both within the city limits and the county limits, because this whole concept of affordable housing, I think you first have to have a population goal. So that's question one, and then I have a follow-up.
You're addressing to both people. Who wants to answer?
Anybody.
Okay.
I couldn't speculate. I don't know what our population growth rate is. I'm sure it's.
Do you know,
Cyndi?
I don't. My gut would say that it's probably going to grow, but I don't know that for sure. So I don't know the answer to that.
So I think, so the reason why this is so critical is, here on this side of the hill, and I was a planning commissioner 6 years before, having, many years as an elected official, is nobody ever wanted to answer that question, even within the planning department. And so I had to end up calculating it myself, and folks were kind of flipping out because reasonably, there's 2 million people in Santa Clara County. Within 20 to 30 years, no question, this is going to be 2.5 million to 3 million. The demand is this is not Lawrence, Kansas. It's not Buffalo, New York. This is not someplace where you where you have vacancies, right? If you built to accommodate demand, you're going to look at least a 30 to 50% increase in population. My guess for Santa Cruz County is you could easily double, if not triple, the population if enough was built where people could actually, there were spaces for people to go to. Again, as opposed to other parts of the country where, it doesn't matter how much you build, it's not going to all get filled, right? So, the second half of my question really is about UC Santa Cruz. And, I ask this in a very gentle way, but I know that there's, the town gown issues on your side of the hill are significant. Here on this side of the hill, as the population is going to explode even more, there is no UC campus over here, but there's an extension right here in Santa Clara, right down the block from where I reside. If the team in Santa Cruz on both sides was to start to pressure UC Santa Cruz to increase the offerings on this side of the hill and to look over a period of 20 to 40 years, because it takes that doggone long, right? You could end up transitioning UC Santa Cruz to this side of the hill, which is much better able to handle it, to force the growth. This is where the demand is. This is where the jobs are. Because otherwise, what Santa Cruz County is really going to have to look at, you are going to add another 10 to 15,000 students per year at that campus. And
Chris,
I don't get the sense you guys want it.
You're absolutely right that there's more land to improve over the hill, but they have an affordable housing problem there. It's even worse than here, right?
Well, yeah, but I mean, true. But I think where the difference is that although there's obviously all ongoing tension here about expanding, and people, I mean, I grew up in L.A., so for me, I mean, I've got a real, obvious kind of an urban mindset. There's enough of us in the Santa Clara County area who could tolerate this and would actually say, yeah, add another million. We're cool with it. But my sense is that in Santa Cruz, I mean, you guys are nibbling around the edges. It's been fascinating listening about this ballot measure. But, I will ask the proponent, let's say this passes. In your wildest dreams, how many additional units will be constructed based on the money collected? At your maximum fantasy dreams, how many would you be able to build?
Yeah, so I talked to affordable housing experts, and they said that's a really, really, and I don't build affordable housing for my job. I have a different day job. And so they said that really is impossible to answer, but they say
no, that's not. You know what? No, I'm going to nail you on this. If you have no idea at all what the maximum could be in terms of
we don't know the maximum amount of money that would be raised. So we're missing important variables in the equation.
Well,
right?
then, hang on. You're telling me you have no algorithm that shows like a potential minimum and a potential maximum? Oh my God,
we
what
do know
a joke.
how much money.
I don't care if you're right. How much would raise?
The low end is
in
probably 2.5 to 4. We think it's more like 7.
$7 million a year.
Yeah.
Okay, so you have $7 million a year. More or less, how many units are we looking at per year?
It depends how many state and federal grants could be used with matching.
So fantasy, maximize it. You want to? Let's say we triple it. Let's say you get a 3-to-1 match, which I think is probably way beyond.
It's going to be more units than we have now, which is the point of the measure.
No. I'm asking numbers because it all gets down to what's
not
the
what I
vision
do for
for
my
the
day
community.
job. And I'm going to leave it to affordable housing experts.
Chris, love this call, but we want to squeeze one or two more. Thank you for calling. Pete in Live Oak, you're on. Quick.
Oh, hi. I just wanted to say about this taxes thing. There's if you tax people, if you build affordable housing by collecting more taxes from people, then you're going to have excess costs in building and administration because it's all amateurs taking the money from people from people and then spending it on development. Now the way to use taxes to get affordable housing is to give tax breaks to builders.
Incentives. Thank you for calling. I hate to do this, but this is probably going to be the last call. Eric in Santa Cruz, you're on.
Oh, hey, thanks for taking my call. I just want to say I consider myself a progressive, but the authors of this measure, and I can support a vacant home tax in principle, but the proponents of this measure, they're just lying. There is no way there's anywhere close to 1 in 10 empty homes in the city of Santa Cruz, not on any block, not even on West Cliff Drive. Yeah. And the real numbers, and Ms. Dawson keeps citing, they keep changing their metric. First it was the census.
All right, hate to do it, but that's the end of the show. Our apologies to Jane in Capitola. Wow. I wouldn't retire if we had programs like this, because you guys are great, both of you, and thank you for coming in. This is what KSCO should be used for, to have these kinds of discussions. Anyhow, see you next week. We have a really interesting show scheduled for next week, ladies and gentlemen, so see you then, okay?
That's all, folks.
KSCO, Santa Cruz, Salinas, Monterey, San Jose.